helps the back to sink further into the floor. So closing your eyes, and just becoming aware of the breathing for a few moments, feeling the calming effect of the breath. Have a sense of your body becoming heavy, sinking further and further into the floor. And then bringing your attention onto your face. Trying to see if there are any points of tension in your face, especially the brow. If the brow is furrowed, just release it. If there's any tension around the eyes, just allow them to become soft. Similarly with the mouth. And if you're clenching your jaw, just release it. And then allowing a sensation of relaxation to spread over the crown of your head, the back of your head, down through your neck and throat, further down into your shoulders, and if you notice that you're holding your shoulders, if they're tense, just let them go. Let your shoulders fall. And then taking your awareness down through the arms, the elbows, through the wrists, into your hands, to the tips of your fingers. If your fingers are interlocked, just release them. And bring your attention then back up to your shoulders, letting go of your shoulder blades, letting them sink into the floor so the chest can open. And then bring your attention onto your back, the upper back, trying to let go of any tensions there. Middle of your back, lower back, and then bring your attention onto the abdomen. If you notice that you're holding your stomach, again let it go. Just let it relax. Then bring your attention further down into the pelvic region, releasing any tension there. Down through your thighs, knees, calf muscles, ankles, into your feet, to the tips of your toes. Bringing your awareness once more onto the breath. Just feeling it coming in and going out from your body. And when you're ready, opening your eyes. And then in your own time, sitting up and turning slowly over to your left-hand side, pausing there for a moment. And then sitting up and setting up for meditation. So welcome everyone from me. My name's Deva Mitra, and as you've heard this evening, we're going to do the mindfulness of breathing practice. So first of all, just a couple of requests. If you have a water bottle with you, we will be having a tea break in about 40 minutes, so that I'm going to ask you please to refrain from using your water bottles during the meditation, because that can disturb some people, and I suspect you won't die of thirst in the meantime. If you want to have a swig now, please feel free, but hopefully that'll be the last you'll need to water yourself before the tea break. So as usual, I'm going to ask you to try to sit perfectly still for the duration of the meditation, which won't be that long, 35 minutes, something like that, maybe 40. And of course, if you really need to move because you're in considerable pain, well, feel free to do that. But otherwise, just try to endure any minor discomfort that you find while you're meditating. And that will help you to focus your mind. The mindfulness of breathing. So shortly we'll have our tea break, but I'd just like to say a few words about the challenge and how that affects his class. Basically, we're exploring themes from a book called Mind, Reactive and Creative, a small book. I gave a talk last week on that theme, but I'll be giving another talk this week. But if you weren't here last week, that's fine. The talk is a standalone talk, so you'll be able to follow it without any problems. So please come back after tea break, and I'll say more about I'll tell you what I'm going to say when we do it. Okay, so now's the time to slake your thirst. Go and get yourself a cup of tea and even a biscuit.
Say thank you.
You're welcome. Welcome back. There are so few of us in here this evening. I wonder if we could move forward a bit. There's plenty of space. It just makes it easier for me to talk to you. You can bring your chairs forward too if you want to. It's up to you. I can project to the back, it's not a problem.
Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. That if you feel more comfortable there, by all means, stay where you are. Or move the chair forward if you want to do that. I wasn't quite sure what you were asking me actually. Okay. So, as you just heard, we've got a theme for this challenge, which is mind, reactive, and creative. So I'll just say a little bit about that to fill out what Anantavira was saying earlier. The booklet that is on sale out there, it's only a small booklet really, was based on a lecture that Sangharakshita gave way back in 1967 or something like that, maybe a bit later than that. But it's a foundational sort of approach to the way that we go about teaching meditation within the Triratna Buddhist community. And I think it really does encapsulate the whole of the Buddhist life quite beautifully, quite simply, and putting it in non-traditional terms. You won't find an equivalent in any of the canonical Buddhist languages for the terms reactive mind and creative mind. But in spirit, it really does capture what we're trying to do in practicing Buddhism and practicing Buddhist meditation. So just to say that. But one thing which is important to understand, that although we speak in terms of the reactive mind and the creative mind, it's not that there are two separate minds. There's just one mind. But there are two different ways in which we can use our mind, if you like, or two different ways, two different modes of action. One of which is what we call reactive, the other of which is creative. So I'll say a little bit this evening about an aspect of the reactive mind and an aspect of the creative mind. And I'm going to hang this around a very traditional Buddhist teaching, the teaching of the three poisons. I started on this last week. I talked about craving or greed. This evening I'm going to talk about hatred or aversion, because according to Buddhist analysis, at the heart of existence we're fueled by these three core negative mental states: greed, hatred, and delusion. So I'm going to say a little bit about hatred, and I'm going to say a little bit about metta, universal loving kindliness, which is of course one of the two meditations that I hope you're all familiar with, and that's so we get an experience of, we're looking at an element of the reactive mind, an element of the creative mind. So to start off with the reactive mind, and specifically hatred. Hatred is quite a broad sort of term really in context, because it covers quite a wide range of different emotional reactions or responses to life. But fundamentally, what's going on when we speak in terms of hatred, it's better spoken of really as aversion. But I suppose the word hatred is used because it's clearly indicating a very negative state, and one of the most extreme elements within that spectrum of emotional negativity is hatred itself. But it covers a whole range of things like irritability, impatience, resentment, ill will, and so on and so forth. But what the mechanics are beneath this, it's important to understand. And you should have come across this in a number of different contexts, but basically it's this. We have pleasant experience and we have unpleasant experience. And the way that the reactive mind will respond to unpleasant experience is to want to push it away. I don't want that. That's not me. This is painful. So correspondingly with that, there's an element, well, the craving is involved as well. I mean, when we have a pleasant experience, we want to repeat it. We start to crave it, we start to desire it, we want to keep on having that pleasant experience. We want pleasant experience, we don't want unpleasant experience. So our reaction to unpleasant experience is an attempt to push it away. What that means in experience is that we're pushing away or denying our own immediate experience. And we do this in meditation sometimes too. I mean, for example, I was on a retreat a few years ago, and being rather elderly, I tend to sit on a chair with all the other older people on the retreat, either along the sides of the shrine room or at the back. And on one occasion, there was someone who was not quite elderly, she's more like well into middle age, but she breathed very noisily. So she was breathing something like this. Can you hear me at the back?
Yeah.
All right. So she was projecting her breath all over the shrine room, but I was sitting right next to her. And of course my initial response was, I don't want this. This is irritating. It's getting in the way of my meditation. But of course that's just a reaction. That was me in reactive mode. So I thought, well, that won't do. What can I do? And then I realized the best thing to do was to do the mindfulness of her breathing. Which is actually what I did for a while. It sort of amused me. I thought it was a bit of a joke, and it just got me into a better frame of mind. Actually, it's not that uncommon when you're teaching mindfulness of breathing that there'll be someone in the room whose breath can be heard by the entire room. And of course they're trying to control the breath in some way, or, well actually I don't really know what's going on, but sometimes that's what it amounts to. So that's an example of me in reactive mode. Here was an experience I didn't want. I didn't want this woman sitting next to me breathing like that, but that's what I got. I could have got up and left the shrine room, but I chose not to. In fact, it would have been difficult for me to do that. So I had to stay there and endure it. And so you try and make something positive out of it. And I managed to do that on that occasion. Which is a very, very simple example. But my initial reaction is based in aversion. I don't want this. And so when you meditate, you'll find that there are all sorts of things perhaps that you can, that are similar for you. Like, for instance, in the last meditation, my eyes were itching quite badly, and I told all of you lot to sit still. So obviously I had to sit still too. I couldn't exactly, start moving myself. But it was simply an unpleasant experience. That's all it was. And whenever we have an unpleasant experience, we try to push it away. We make it more difficult and more painful for ourselves. So when it comes to meditation, you have something which is irritating you like that. I mean, it could be somebody else in the room for whatever reason, whether it's heavy breathing or for something else, or it might just be one of these itches. But the thing is, if you start scratching every itch that you feel when you meditate. You'll be forever moving. Well, maybe not forever, but that you'd spend a lot of time moving, and that distracts you from what you're trying to do. An itch doesn't last very long. They usually sort of pass over within a minute or maybe a couple of minutes at the most. And if you just let it be, in the first instance, you're not engaging in reactivity. That is to say, you're not pushing experience away. But also you're recognizing the fact that it will pass, and you're not allowing it to distract you. So that means, therefore, that you're more likely to be able to concentrate more, focus your mind more on what you're doing in the meditation, whether it's focusing on the breath or developing metta. So that's the reactive mind in relation to that particular poison. There's something else I wanted to say. Got a few notes here. Okay, leave that. So let's have a look at the creative mind. The creative mind is characterized by spontaneity, by awareness, by positive emotion. And because it's spontaneous, it doesn't get so trapped in our habitual patterns. Our habitual patterns tend to limit us. We quite often fall back into habits because we know what we know. Because we're so familiar with them. You may have the same. You may indulge in the same kind of distractions when you meditate, or you find yourself doing that. You have a favorite daydream or a favorite fantasy or whatever. Again, something which takes us away from our immediate experience and which is one way of pushing away our immediate experience. So the creative mind is characterized by positive emotion and so on. I should have said actually that the reactive mind, it is characterized by habit as, let's say bad habit, as Nantavira mentioned earlier, but it's also mechanical. It's unthinking, it's unaware. It's just the kind of mind we lapse into when we forget what we're doing, which we frequently do, which is why we have to learn to meditate, to try and overcome our forgetfulness. Unmindfulness is essentially forgetfulness. We forget what we're doing. We become distracted by something. So the creative mind doesn't do that. And it's characterized by positive emotion. So coming back to the responses or the reactions to unpleasant experience and pleasant experience, whereas the reactive mind will want to push away unpleasant experience and will want to repeat pleasant experience and pursue it, the creative mind doesn't do that. It simply accepts the experience. Now, when it comes to painful experience, I was talking with someone about this in the tea break, physically painful experience, if we try to push that away, in the first instance, it's unrealistic because you've got it. I've got a pain in my back right now because, as I explained last week, I fell down the stairs. And for an old man like me, it's not a great idea. So I've got quite a big bruise on the side of my ribs here. But if I resist that, if I resist the pain, it's only going to make it worse because I start putting energy into that. It becomes bigger than it actually is. Whereas if I just accept it, relax into it, it's a totally different experience. I had this on a much bigger scale when I was going through cancer treatments about 9 years ago, especially going through chemotherapy, which is a very unpleasant experience, I can assure you. But I knew right from the beginning, mind you, this is after 40 odd years of practicing meditation on a daily basis, I knew that the most important thing for me was to maintain positive mental states. In other words, to remain emotionally positive. And that would get me through the experience, and it would make it, certainly more bearable, but even more than that, in a certain sense, I almost felt like I could enjoy it. I confess it got rather wearisome towards the end, but you can transform the quality of your experience simply by not reacting, just letting it be. If there's nothing you can do about it, and especially in the case of physical pain that you've already got, the best way is just to accept it and relax into it. So this is one way in which we can use our creative mind, that we can use positive emotion. At the highest level, someone who is in what we'd call in the Buddhist context enlightened does not react at all to unpleasant or even pleasant feeling or emotion or sensation. The enlightened mind can just experience it with equanimity. It's unmoved by it in a way. There's a teaching called the 8 worldly winds, and one of those worldly winds is the pairing of pleasure and pain, which is essentially what we've been talking about. So ultimately you can become equanimous, you can experience equanimity in relation to pleasure and pain. You don't pursue the one and you don't try to avoid the other. Now the reason why it's good not to pursue certain kinds of pleasure at least is because too often they lead us into pain. We quite often have, there are things that we invest our hopes, etc. into, but we become disappointed because our hopes sometimes are not realized. I mean, the classic case is when you get, it's what happened to me when I was younger. I fell in love, of course, as we all do, and I thought at one point I'd found my ideal girl. I was very, very much in love with her. We were in love with one another, but 6 months later, it had fallen apart. I fell out of love with her, and I couldn't understand why. And that caused me more pain than even falling in love with her caused me. And it caused me quite a bit to start with, at least. So very often we pursue objects like that, which ultimately lead to painful experience. Anyway, I'm not quite sure why I got onto that particularly, but I think it's about time I stopped to see if you've got any questions, especially since there's so few of us. And then we'll do a bit more meditation, but not just yet. Yeah.
I guess the thought I had was, what does not reacting to pleasure look like? I mean, because I guess it's not aversion from pleasure, because that's still part of life. But what could it look like? Well,
there are different kinds of pleasures. There are some pleasures which are positive, and others which are not so positive. Any pleasure which leads to pain is obviously not going to help you. So what was
I think I worded it properly, not reacting to the pleasure. So I know what not reacting to pain looks like, but what does sort of...
Well, I mean, the typical reaction to pleasure is that you want to repeat the experience. Mm-hmm. So underneath that is craving for it again. I mean, let's take a simple pleasure like having an ice cream. You have one ice cream and it comes to an end.
That's why I don't eat ice cream at all.
Well, so what's the problem? So in a sense you understand that.
I think my question was more like, as someone is living, pleasure might present itself to them as part of life. Yeah. And what does it look like to experience that without having the attachment, without wanting to repeat it? Kind of.
Well, I suppose that there are certain pleasures which are just not like that. Like, for example, meditation, the pleasures that come through meditation. Of course why do you keep coming back here? Presumably you feel that there's some benefit to you from them, and they're pleasurable. So those pleasures, in a sense, it's a positive thing to desire, because they're not going to harm you in any way. But if you have half a dozen ice creams every day, it will harm you. To use a silly example, you put on weight, presumably, which is not good for your health, which will lead to problems and so on and so forth. Whereas, if you're sort of engaging in and enjoying the pleasures that come from meditation, it's a different matter. One of the things that we try to encourage people to do within our movement is to learn to appreciate, if they don't already do so, the fine arts, because there's a certain pleasure about going to a gallery, for example. It'll give you a very different kind of pleasure, a different sort of, a more refined kind of pleasure than eating an ice cream. Do you get the idea? So it's not that you're not attached to that sort of thing. There's a certain kind of attachment. I'll come back to you in a moment. It's of a different order. Mm-hmm. It's not going to cause you pain or harm. It's actually going to help you. Mm-hmm. Like we encourage the development of friendship as well, and for the same reason. Mm-hmm. We encourage people to go on retreats because there's a certain amount of pleasure in that. I'm not saying that all the pleasures that are good are to do with Buddhism or practicing Buddhism. There are plenty of others too, but just be aware of what pleasures are likely to lead you into painful situations. Mm. Yes?
Thank you.
Okay.
I remember talking to one of the team members at the retreat we took on, winter retreat, about craving.
Yeah.
That tends to be my one in particular, so I had a question about that.
Okay.
Craving in terms of relationships. So my partner, how would I, God, I know, I'm going to ask you a big question. I'll see what I can take from what you say. So the place that I tend to go to is wanting to recreate positive experiences with her all the time. So I only want the positive.
Right.
And I always want to push away the negative. What I've written some notes down from what you said. So in terms of, so if I apply equanimity to that, and if I react to the creative mind, I'm aware, and I'm not going back into my normal set of habitual habits of just wanting the good.
Yeah.
And I'm allowing the positive, I'm allowing the negative. I just hear, when you say that, I hear a voice screaming in my head, like, how do I not get attached to the positive, because it feels so good, and not want to recreate it. Yeah.
Well, let's go back to always wanting the positive. I mean, that's just unrealistic.
Yeah.
Because none of us are perfect. Mm-hmm. And what happened when I fell out of love with my ideal girl was that I suddenly realized she wasn't. It's a classic case of psychological projection. I didn't know about that at the time, by the way. I was very young and naive. I thought she was something that she wasn't. It wasn't her fault. It's just that she wasn't what I wanted her to be. And that's bound to lead you into pain. And if you just want the positive sides of your relationship, that will lead to pain, because you'll get frustrated because she's not perfect. She never was, she never will be, not unless she becomes enlightened. So it's asking for trouble. If you want a stable relationship, presumably what you need to do is just accept that your partner has imperfections, like you yourself do. We all have them. And of course, if those imperfections are too much for you to live with, well, maybe you need to look for someone else. That's a question you might have to ask yourself.
Yeah, for me, it's not so much that. For me, it's the struggle of impermanence, of when I say I want to recreate the positive,
Yeah.
I mean that I don't want it to end.
Of course.
So for me, it's the fear of impermanence that I'm constantly trying to knock away. But I guess it's the same thing again that we were saying of trying to push away.
Yeah.
Which will just cause pain. Yeah.
Or grasp after the positive, which is really what it sounds like you're trying to do. And it's very human. We all do it. But it leads us into pain. All living beings seek happiness, and they want to avoid unhappiness. But unfortunately for us, only too often, we pursue objects which we think are going to lead to that happiness, but then they don't. And that's because we have unrealistic expectations. It's a matter of wisdom. We'll be coming on to that next week. Will that do?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. So, any last questions? Yeah.
I get pain in my back when I'm meditating.
Yeah.
And when I first started meditating, I remember getting pain. I can't remember where it was. When I was sitting, I'd get some pain, and then I could just be with that somehow, and then it would go.
Yeah.
But what's happening at the moment is that it's like, if I sort of ignore it, then that's uncomfortable, but it's okay. But if I'm like, instead I'm sort of like, oh okay, why don't I just get curious about it, and it's just sensation, and let's see what it's about and see what it's like, then suddenly it's unbearable. Like it's not going, it's not making it better to be more aware of it, and it's just more uncomfortable, almost to the point of feeling like I can't carry on sitting. I'm just wondering what, like, I don't know, maybe I'm not practicing in the same way as I used to, or something. Like I just wondering what's happening, what I should do.
Well, I can only say what I do. I'm initially, of course you're aware of it, and it's not necessarily that you relax into the pain. That's one way of putting it. But I think what I actually do is just let it be, relax in that sense. Don't try to sort of, certainly not push it away, but if you try to do that, it just hardens and becomes more painful. Trying to think of, when I went through chemotherapy, I had a lot of pain because you have so many horrible side effects. I just sort of let it be. That's the only way I can describe it, really. It was my immediate experience, and if I did try to push it away, I would be denying my own life in a way. Life is painful in all sorts of ways, not just physically but emotionally, of course. Can't really say more than that. I don't know. You've got to find your own relationship with it. But if you're meditating and you're experiencing pain, maybe you need to look at your posture in some way, or find another way of meditating. I mean, some people can't meditate on the floor because they just don't have the necessary sort of flexibility in their limbs or whatever, and so you have to meditate on a chair. I frequently have pain in my back when I'm meditating, and have done for the last 10 years or so. There's nothing much I can do about it. I've tried to get treatments for it. It doesn't change things, but I just try to sit with it. And actually, if I do that, I forget about it in the end, and I can focus on what I'm doing. But if you push it away, it'll just bounce back, and it'll bounce back even more, and it'll seem more painful than it actually is. I don't know if that's what's happening to you, but that's how it seems to me. I think we need to do some more meditation. We're running out of time. So if you'd like to set yourself up for meditation, again. closing your eyes. So we'll do just the first stage of the mindfulness of breathing, and then I'll ring the bell and move straight into the third stage. So we'll just do those 2 stages. The first stage of the mindfulness of breathing. And now, just following the breath. So that's all for this evening. So 2 last things to mention. First of all, if you could help us put away all the mats and cushions in the room, there's quite a lot of them this evening. We would greatly appreciate that. And secondly, just to remind you that we encourage a culture of generosity at the centre. So if you've not made a donation already and you'd like to, there should be someone on reception with a bowl and a card reader. So if you could make a contribution, that would be great. And apart from that, I wish you a pleasant journey back home.
Thank you.
Fellow back pain person.
Yeah.
Well, I've got slip discs. What is it with you?
Oh my god, wow, that sounds terrible.
Yeah, what's yours?
No, nothing. Nothing. It's just like, it's just happening randomly when I slip. I think it didn't happen for ages.